Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we plunge into the fascinating currents of information, pulling out the most compelling insights just for you.
Great to be here.
Today we're dissecting something really quite extraordinary, I think. It's the undeniable power of storytelling, especially on screen.
Uh-huh.
How it ignites not just like casual discussion, but really passionate, often fiercely divided debate among viewers.
It's amazing, isn't it, how invested people become?
Totally. It makes you wonder, how do audiences get so utterly invested that just one single episode can send, no, not just ripples, but like a full-blown earthquake across social media,
Yeah.
leaving communities buzzing for days, sometimes weeks?
It's a profound thing, really.
Yeah.
It speaks to that emotional, intellectual connection people form with stories, with characters.
Right.
It goes way beyond just passive viewing. People actively engage, they internalize things. They often feel this, like, personal stake in what happens.
A personal stake, yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, the characters' triumphs, their struggles, they can feel incredibly personal to the audience.
Yeah.
It fosters this sense of shared experience, almost like a communal thing that goes way beyond just watching the show.
That's a really key point. And speaking of personal connection, cultural touchstones, our focus today is iThonga.
Ah, yes. iThonga.
Now, for those of you tuning in from maybe outside the region, iThonga has become a genuine cultural phenomenon here in Mzansi. It's an affectionate term for South Africa, used pretty widely.
He really had.
It's the kind of show that just captures the public imagination. You hear people talking about it everywhere, work, home, and definitely online.
Yeah.
Recently, it's just been dominating feeds.
Well, iThonga's always had this unique knack, hasn't it? Weaving together these really intricate family dynamics, especially with the Magwazas, with broader societal stuff.
Yeah.
And even that distinct thread of the supernatural.
Right, the iThonga element itself.
Exactly. It creates this really rich, kind of complex tapestry that viewers just love to unravel each week. You build these deep connections with characters you've watched, grow or sometimes, sadly, kind of evolve over multiple seasons.
Absolutely. But even the most beloved shows, the ones that feel like part of the furniture, they have these flashpoints, don't they? These moments that just completely reshape how fans react.
Oh, definitely.
And for iThonga, that moment, well, it arrived with episode 91, aired July 7th, 2025.
That was the one.
Yeah. This wasn't just any episode. It really zeroed in on two incredibly explosive plot lines that didn't just, like, shake the table.
Yeah.
They pretty much flipped it over.
Two big ones.
First, we saw Makumalo's desperate, almost tragic decision, seeking what she thought was protection from the, well, let's face it, the dangerous and manipulative Mbonjeni.
A really tough spot she was in.
Yeah, not a choice made lightly at all. Born from huge pressure, fear.
And then running right alongside that, almost like this chilling counter story, we saw the calculated, insidious,
Yeah.
frankly, masterful games of the show's emerging antagonist, Imanathi.
Imanathi. Yeah, she'd been building steam, but episode 91, that's where she really stepped into the light as this puppet master, weaving this web of deceit that just tangled up several key characters.
She really arrived in that episode.
Totally. So our mission for this deep dive is basically to unpack the seismic aftershocks of episode 91. This single episode, with these intense choices, these twists, it left the Mzansi viewership in this state of really heated, often polarized debate.
You could feel it.
Oh, yeah. Social media was just buzzing, conflicting opinions everywhere, clear factions forming, very vocal ones. So we're going to explore what those factions were, what was driving their passionate responses.
The why behind it all.
Exactly. And ultimately, what these intense, divergent reactions tell us about modern storytelling itself, especially now with immediate feedback loops.
Yeah.
And that evolving, sometimes pretty demanding relationship between creators and their audience.
And to do that, we've really dug in. We've synthesized a huge amount of stuff, fan comments, detailed forum discussions, social media trends.
Right.
By looking at all these different reactions, we can hopefully get at the nuances, how viewers interpret things, how they connect or maybe disconnect with the material. It's about going beyond just likes or dislikes.
Yeah, getting deeper.
Yeah, to really uncover the why behind their engagement and crucially their frustration sometimes or their excitement. It's a deep dive into maybe the collective psychology of fandom.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Let's really dive into these fissures that opened up in the iThonga fandom after episode 91. Try and understand that divide. Because the immediate fallout was, Well, it was something to see. It wasn't just a bit of disagreement. The audience was instantly, almost sort of viscerally split into these really clear factions.
It was stark.
On one side, you had a pretty big chunk of viewers just praising the escalating drama. They loved the higher stakes, what they saw as, a necessary deepening of character complexity. They felt like, yes, this is what the show needed. New life, new tension.
Injecting some energy.
Exactly. While on the other side, you had an equally vocal group expressing, growing frustration, maybe even alarm at where the narrative was headed.
Worried it was losing its way.
For them, it felt like a misstep, a deviation from the show's core appeal, or worse, maybe a sign of, narrative fatigue setting in.
It was such a contrast.
Yeah.
Almost like people were watching two completely different shows based on the same episode.
That's a great way to put it. And like we said, the core of this conflict, this really palpable division, it stemmed mainly from those two central, really emotionally charged plot lines.
The big two.
Makamalo's desperate, some would say pretty ill-advised choice to team up with Mabonjini, and Imanathi's cold, calculating manipulations, which seemed to just snare characters that, a lot of viewers felt should really know better by now.
Right. These weren't minor subplots happening off to the side.
No way. Front and center.
Yeah.
Demanding this immediate, often really gut-level reaction from everyone watching.
And that immediate, incredibly vocal division, it just highlights how deep that emotional investment runs, doesn't it? For viewers of these long-running saga like iThonga,
Definitely.
this isn't just passive viewing, putting something on in the background while you scroll your phone.
Not at all.
This is active, engaged viewership. People feel this sense of, psychological ownership over these stories and characters.
Ownership, yeah.
Their reactions aren't just observational, they're deeply personal, often mirroring their own values, their hopes for the characters, their expectations of, narrative integrity. It speaks to that powerful parasocial relationship thing.
Where the lines get blurry.
It's exactly. Where the lines between fiction and sort of lived experience can become wonderfully and sometimes, frustratingly blurred.
It's almost like, imagine walking into a really fancy restaurant, right? Michelin-starred place. You order this complex, multi-layered dish everyone's talking about.
Okay.
And then you watch everyone around you taste it. Some diners are just raving, oh, the bold flavors, the unexpected combos, the artistry. They love how daring it is. It's exhilarating, fresh, challenges their palate.
Right, they're loving the innovation.
Totally. But then right next to them, other diners are practically recoiling. They find the flavors too strong. Maybe the combination's just jarring. Feels like it's not sticking to, what that kind of dish should be.
Doesn't meet their expectations.
Exactly. Maybe they even feel the chef went for shock value over actual substance.
Oh.
Both groups are eating the exact same meal, same chef. But their individual tastes, their expectations build up over time, even their mood. It leads to wildly different, really strong reactions.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Because that's precisely what we saw with iThonga episode 91. Same story, but profoundly different experiences, different expectations, shaping how the audience responded.
Yeah.
It's a powerful illustration of how subjective consuming art is, especially when it taps into those long-held emotional investments we talked about.
And speaking of strong reactions, let's zoom in on the character who really became the lightning rod for all this energy, the one defining so much of the debate after the episode, Imanathi.
Ah, yes, the agent of chaos.
Her calculated climb as this master manipulator undeniably became the episode's most talked about thing. Her ability to just sow chaos, play her games, and it was met with this fascinating, almost contradictory mix. Glee from some, and just outright vocal criticism from others.
And what's so interesting there is how quickly a relatively new or newly prominent character can just dominate the whole conversation, reshape the entire landscape of the show's reception. It shows the immediate power of a well-introduced, even if she's highly controversial, antagonist, to just energize and, polarize a fan base.
Yeah.
Imanathi didn't just enter the story. She fundamentally changed its, emotional and dramatic math.
There's definitely a very active, very vocal pro-villain camp, and they are electrified by the energy Imanathi brings.
They love it.
Yeah, their core view is basically she's a villain with real teeth, someone truly ruthless, effectively shaking the table, like you said, and crucially exposing everyone else's hypocrisy, their vulnerabilities.
Right. They don't just tolerate her. They see her as this necessary, maybe even cathartic disruption to the show's status quo.
Absolutely. We saw comments that really captured this, like pure enthusiasm. For example, a TikTok user at DramaLover92, they passionately declared, and this is a quote, Finally, a villain with a real bite. Imanathi is ruthless, and I am here for it.
I am here for it. Classic.
Right. She's shaking the table and exposing everyone's hypocrisy. The actress playing her is phenomenal. I can't look away when she's on screen.
Wow. That really sums up the enjoyment, doesn't it?
Mm.
Watching someone who just defies convention, forces conflict. It shows a desire for that powerful kind of unrepentant force that challenges everything.
It's a strong take, for sure. And it hints at maybe a deeper fascination with villainy itself. And it wasn't just one person. Another viewer at New Face Blues echoed it. It's about time we got some new blood in this story. Imanathi is a breath of fresh air, even if she's a hurricane. Her game is compelling to watch.
A hurricane. That imagery really underlines the destructive but undeniably impactful force she represents. It's about the sheer dramatic momentum she brings.
Yeah. What is it about the dynamic villain that appeals so much, do you think, for this part of the audience?
Well, I think the draw isn't just about, like, simple good versus evil. It's often about the disruption the antagonist brings.
Yeah.
The mirror they hold up to other characters' hidden flaws, or even wider societal hypocrisies. And let's be honest, there's the sheer entertainment value of their schemes, right? Often complex, maybe morally gray. It shows that some viewers really prioritize that narrative excitement, that challenge to the established dynamics, over straightforward morality.
They want things shaken up.
They actively want to see the established order, even if it's the comforting world of their favorite drama, just thoroughly shaken. It's a taste for chaos, maybe, or at least the dramatic potential chaos unlocks.
And the evidence of her impact, Imanathi's impact, it goes way beyond just comments on social media.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, the fact that dedicated fan-made review channels popped up, like Izimfila Zika Iminathi, which translates to The Secrets of Imanathi.
Wow, okay. Dedicated channels.
Yeah, that confirms that her schemes, her whole character arc, are a major magnetic draw for viewers. People aren't just passively commenting, they're actively creating content, dissecting her every move, theorizing about her motives, even celebrating her villainy.
That kind of elevated fan engagement, whole channels, communities springing up just to dissect a villain, it speaks volumes about how compelling she is to that segment of the audience.
Totally.
It's a clear sign that for them, she's not just a plot device pushing conflict forward. She's a central, intriguing figure worth analyzing deeply. It suggests that complex, maybe layered antagonists often give people more to talk about, more to speculate on, than even the most heroic good guys.
Interesting.
Viewers are hungry, you know. They want to understand the machinations, the psychology, the grand plan of a really effective villain.
Okay, but as with any character who splits opinion like this, not everyone's on board. There's definitely a significant and equally vocal skeptics' corner.
The counter-argument.
Exactly. And their reservations are just as passionate. Their core criticism that Imanathi's manipulation is just too obvious, too transparent.
Oh, so not clever enough.
Basically, yeah. They see her less like a complex, cunning character and more like a lazy, convenient plot device just there to create conflict. Their refrain is often, we've seen this trope a million times before, points to a sense of predictability that, for them, undermines the drama.
Which immediately brings up that critical question about narrative integrity, doesn't it? Internal consistency. Like, how much disbelief are viewers willing to suspend?
Right.
If a villain's schemes feel too see-through, or rely on other characters acting unrealistically dumb, it can quickly undermine the intelligence of those characters, makes the whole story feel contrived, breaks that immersion. Viewers are really smart about the internal logic of a fictional world. Stretch it too thin and frustration just builds.
Exactly. We saw a post from a longtime viewer at iThonga Day 1 on a fan forum. They said, quote, Imanathi's manipulation is just too obvious. How is no one in the family seeing through it?
It's the core question, isn't it?
Yeah. It feels less like a complex character and more like a lazy plot device to create conflict. We've seen this trope a million times. That's pretty damning. Highlights a perceived lack of originality, or this reliance on other characters just being conveniently ignorant. It's a demand for more narrative cleverness.
And another user, a plot hole hunter, piled on with a similar thought. So we're supposed to believe that seasoned characters who faced plots before, are just going to fall for her act.
Right. It stretches belief.
It undermines their intelligence. I need more depth, more motivation. Not just a villain who is evil for the sake of being evil. And that points to a clear demand for more nuanced characterization, even in villains. Audiences today are sophisticated. They want a reason for the villainy, or at least a believable execution of it, not just a cartoon villain.
They want characters to act logically within who they've been established to be.
Exactly.
So this really highlights that incredibly fine line, doesn't it? Between an engaging villain and one who just strains credulity.
It's so fun.
The audience has these expectations, right? About how smart characters should be, how much agency they have. When a plot device, especially a villain's scheme, feels unearned or forced, rather than flowing naturally from motivations and believable situations, that's when viewers get really frustrated.
Yeah. It's not just about the villain being evil. It's about whether their evil feels, I don't know, organic, strategically intelligent within the world the writers have built.
Exactly. When writers lean too heavily on contrivance, the audience's trust in the whole story can just evaporate.
Precisely. Writers often try to establish a villain's motivations, even if they're dark or twisted, fairly early on, just to ground their actions in some kind of internal logic.
Makes sense.
It makes their cunning feel earned, their manipulations feel clever, not just forced. When Imanathi's schemes feel too transparent to some viewers, it risks undermining the very intelligence of the world iThonga has spent seasons building. It feels like characters are being dumbed down just to make the plot work.
Which breaks that trust.
Yeah, that crucial bond between storyteller and audience. Viewers want to believe in the reality of the fictional world, and consistency is just paramount for that belief.
Okay, so let's pivot now. To the heart, really, of the most polarized reactions in episode 91, Makumalo's dilemma. We're calling it the Makumalo conundrum.
Makumalo. Always complicated.
Always. She's caught in this impossible, deeply tragic spot, truly between a rock and a hard place. Her deep love and loyalty for Pablo clashing directly with this dangerous, ill-advised pact she made with Momogani.
A terrible choice to have to make.
And this desperate situation, more than anything else in the episode, provoked the most extreme, the most divided reactions across the fan base. No question.
It's that classic tragic setup, isn't it? Where a character tries to protect what they love, but it inadvertently drags them into even deeper trouble.
Exactly. The official summary for the episode captured it perfectly. It said, Mokumalo is ready to fight for her heart, but Mongonjini's protection costs her everything.
Oof. That phrasing itself costs her everything. It frames her not as malicious, but as someone making this desperate, incredibly costly choice under pressure. It immediately invites empathy, even if you think the decision was wrong.
And many viewers, forming what we've called the sympathizer's perspective, their hearts genuinely went out to Makumalo.
You could feel the empathy.
Overwhelmingly, they see her as a victim of circumstance, forced into an impossible corner by external pressures, by desperate love. Their core argument is she's just trying to protect her love in a world that, frankly, seems constantly against her.
Yeah.
They might concede, okay, she made a mistake, yes, but they argue really fervently that it was a mistake born from the heart, a desperate measure, and that she absolutely does not deserve to be played by Imanathi like this.
And that perspective really taps into that deeply human tendency, doesn't it? To empathize with characters we see as victims, victims of their environment, victims of desperate circumstances. For these viewers, the emotional truth of Makumalo's actions, even if those actions have bad consequences, that takes priority over just a cold, logical assessment.
Right.
They prioritize understanding the desperation, the love, the fear behind the choices. It suggests a viewership that values emotional authenticity, narrative nuance, seeing her actions as a response to an overwhelming situation, not just a character flaw. They want to connect on that human level, even with imperfect choices.
We saw tweets from accounts like @TeamMokumalo that just perfectly captured this, saying things like, my heart breaks for Mokumalo. She's just trying to protect her love in a world that is constantly against her. She made a mistake, yes, but it was a mistake born from the heart. She doesn't deserve to be played by Imanathi like this.
Yeah.
It's such a clear, almost gut-level expression of empathy, a desire for her to just catch a break.
And other fans' comment backed this up, explicitly highlighting the external pressures. Let's be real, the Magwaza men backed her into a corner. What was she supposed to do?
Good point.
Of course, she made a desperate move. This shows viewers are actively looking at the bigger picture, considering the very limited options she might have felt she had at the time. They're not just judging the action in isolation, but the circumstances that pushed her towards it.
It speaks to a nuanced view of character agency within constraints.
Exactly.
This analysis really highlights how much agency viewers assign to characters, doesn't it? How much responsibility they give them for their own misfortunes.
Yeah.
For the sympathizers, Makumalo isn't fully responsible. Her hand was forced by situations, by powerful men, by her own deep feelings. It speaks to narratives that resonate with viewers who prioritize that emotional truth over tactical choices. Understanding that love and fear can drive people to do seemingly irrational or self-destructive things.
They see a character trapped by circumstance, so they feel pity rather than placing blame.
Yeah.
It also connects powerfully to that idea of a character in a tragic framework, where external forces, or just a series of bad breaks, significantly limit their choices, making their errors understandable, even if they're still regrettable.
Makes sense.
For these viewers, Mokumalo's story isn't about her inherent flaws, maybe, but about the relentless, grinding pressure of her world. And that resonates deeply with anyone who's ever felt overwhelmed by life, making her vulnerability incredibly relatable.
But then, in stark contrast, we have the frustrated faction.
Oh.
And their patience. It is definitely wearing incredibly thin.
Heard that loud and clear online.
Oh, yeah. Their core argument is they are utterly tired of Makumalo playing the victim, consistently making what they see as poor, repetitive choices.
Same mistakes over and over.
Exactly. They see her decision to get involved with Mogani as just foolish. And they state, quite directly, she brought this whole mess on herself. Their exasperated question echoing everywhere was, when is she going to learn?
And this segment of the audience is vocally demanding character growth, accountability. They're looking for tangible lessons learned from repeated mistakes.
Right.
And when those lessons don't seem to come, their empathy just evaporates, replaced by this growing frustration, sometimes even anger. It suggests a real desire for characters to evolve, to break free from these repetitive cycles of self-inflicted drama.
You could almost feel the collective eye roll in comments, like the one from @MakeItMakeSense25 who just went off, "I'm so tired of Mokumalo playing the victim."
Didn't hold back.
Not at all. She made a foolish decision to get involved with a man like Umbunjani. She brought this on herself. When is she going to learn? It's a direct call for a major shift in her arc. A demand for her to break out of this pattern they see as stagnant, self-destructive.
And that skeptic viewer echoed that frustration. Every week, it's a new mess with Makumalo. It's hard to feel sorry for her when she never seems to learn from her past mistakes. She is the source of her own drama.
Ouch. Source of her own drama.
Yeah. And this highlights a massive challenge for any long-running show, right? How do you keep a character's core identity, their believable flaws, but still show progression? Avoid those repetitive cycles of trouble that just turn the audience off eventually. It's that tricky balance, consistency versus evolution.
This whole analysis really gets into the audience's demand for character development. Accountability. When does a character's recurring flaw stop being compelling and just become frustrating?
A fine line.
Totally. There's this invisible line between a consistent, believable character who makes human mistakes and one who feels stuck in this loop of poor decisions that just leads to audience fatigue.
Yeah.
It raises a big question for writers of long-form drama. What is the right balance between maintaining character consistency, which viewers often like for realism, and driving narrative evolution, which they also crave so things don't get stale?
It's tough. You want characters to feel real, but maybe not so real that they never change or learn, because that can paradoxically make them feel less authentic over the long haul.
Right.
It really boils down to the audience's deep investment in a character's journey. If that journey feels stuck, or worse, like it's going backwards, repeating the same mistakes, it can just erode all the goodwill, that emotional connection built up over seasons.
Yeah.
Viewers invest in the hope of seeing characters overcome things, grow from experiences, eventually reach some kind of resolution or transformation, not just spin their wheels in the same drama week after week. That feeling of spinning wheels is just deadly for long-term engagement.
Okay, so beyond the individual choices of Makumalo and the disruption of Imanathi, episode 91 also seemed to crank up the volume on a broader discussion about the show's overall narrative structure and, critically, its pacing.
Ah, the pacing debate. Always simmering.
Always. The show's speed, or maybe lack of speed, remains this big point of contention, and this episode definitely didn't settle that argument. While iThonga got called a cultural phenomenon, a show that really grabbed the nation's heart, there's this clear, growing feeling among some viewers that it's just not quite living up to its initial hype anymore, or its promise.
And this shifts the focus, doesn't it? From specific character reactions to the wider narrative design. It shows that audience satisfaction isn't just about character empathy or villain effectiveness. It's also about the fundamental mechanics of storytelling.
Like how fast the plot moves.
Exactly. How quickly or slowly a plot unfolds, resolves things, introduces new stuff.
Yeah.
Pacing, it turns out, is this critical, often maybe subconscious, driver of how engaged viewers feel.
Okay, so on one side of this pacing debate, you've got the slow burn advocate.
It's the patient ones.
Yeah. These fans genuinely appreciate the deliberate buildup. Their core belief is good drama needs time. Time to breathe, to develop organically.
Let it simmer.
Right. They love how iThonga is slowly, meticulously peeling back the layers on these complex characters, their tangled relationships. For them, the tension isn't just building, it's building perfectly. And they are convinced the eventual payoff will be totally worth this patient, gradual unfolding.
And this group really embraces that art of delayed gratification, which is common, often celebrated, in genres like telenovelas or other really serialized long-form dramas. For them, the slower pace isn't a bug, it's a feature. It allows for richer character development, deeper emotional resonance, a more immersive, kind of lived-in experience of the story.
Yeah.
Like a telenovela fanatic put it really well, good drama needs time to breathe. I love how iThonga is slowly peeling back the layers of these characters. The tension is building perfectly, and the payoff is going to be worth it. That just highlights this deep appreciation for nuance, for subtext, for that patient investment in the whole arc, valuing the journey as much as the destination.
So what kind of viewer really clicks with that deliberate pace?
Often I think it's someone who enjoys complex character studies, intricate psychological plotting, subtle thematic development. They prefer that over just rapid-fire action and constant twists. The storytelling techniques that work for them. Subtle hints, deeply explored emotional realism, gradual reveals that build suspense without feeling rushed or forced. For these folks, the reward isn't instant gratification. It's a deeper, more satisfying emotional and intellectual connection that builds over time. It's a different kind of storytelling reward system.
They value the journey itself.
Yeah, absolutely. The unfolding relationships, exploring dilemmas, that slow drip of info that lets theories form and deepen. Rather than just wanting a quick resolution, it's about savoring the narrative, letting the world and its people really sink in. For them, rushing the plot would feel like it betrays the depth the show has built.
Okay. But then, the flip side, the action seekers.
I'm patient corner.
And their disappointment is palpable, almost boiling over sometimes. They feel the story is just dragging its feet, moving at a glacial pace, reflecting those real-world critiques you sometimes hear that the show can be, frankly, boring or sluggish.
Yeah, that's a tough criticism for any show.
They express this genuine struggle to stay engaged week after week, finding themselves, checking their phones, losing focus during scenes they feel are just drawn out.
And that's a huge, ever-present challenge for any long-form series, isn't it? How do you maintain consistent pacing, narrative momentum over hundreds of episodes sometimes?
Must be incredibly hard.
A user commented on a review video summing it up perfectly. I was hooked for the first few weeks, but now it's a struggle to stay engaged. I find myself just hoping for something to happen. That just perfectly captures that feeling of narrative fatigue, the excitement wearing off.
And it gets more specific, too, pointing to maybe a structural frustration. Another user complained you could feel the exasperation. It feels like they start a new storyline every week without ever resolving the old ones.
The dangling plot threads problem.
Exactly what happened to, and they might name a specific old plot point. Let's get on with it. It highlights this fundamental frustration with unresolved stories, a perceived lack of payoff, and this feeling the show is just expanding its world without properly tending to the stories already started.
And that analysis really points to the delicate balancing act creators face.
Yeah.
They absolutely need to bring in new intrigue, new characters to keep things fresh, keep people hooked.
Sure.
But they also have this crucial responsibility to satisfyingly resolve the plot threads they've already started. When a viewer feels a story is dragging versus building, it often comes down to that balance.
Right.
Are new questions just piling up without enough answers to old ones? Is there enough sense of progress, or does it feel like characters are just stuck in a loop, conflict without real consequence? The frustration often comes from that broken narrative contract, where the promise of resolution just isn't being met.
And this feeling of disappointment, this sense of unmet expectations, it often gets compounded by something even more fundamental to iThonga, doesn't it?
What's that?
The pervasive feeling that the show's core supernatural premise, the whole iThonga spiritual connection, the thing the show is named after,
Yes, the ghosts.
is being seriously underutilized. This was the unique selling point, the hook that drew so many viewers in at the start. And some fans feel it's just been increasingly sidelined for more standard family drama.
That indeed raises a massive question. for any series with a unique foundational premise like that. How do you balance the character-driven drama with the overarching genre elements, the defining supernatural bits?
It's tricky.
Because when a central, unique premise gets sidelined or forgotten, it can lead to huge audience disappointment. It feels like the show isn't delivering on its original defining promise. It's like a betrayal of the show's identity. Viewers who signed up specifically for that supernatural element feel shortchanged when it just becomes a background whisper.
As one fan put it really pointedly, you could almost feel the frustration, and I'm still waiting for Benel's spirit to actually do something.
Right. Use the ghost.
That's why the show's called iThonga, right? Have him expose Imminathi already. It's such a direct, passionate call for the show to lean back into its original defining element, to leverage it for plot resolution, character development, not just let it linger as this undeveloped idea. They want the ghost in the machine to actually do something.
That comment perfectly illustrates how critical it is to deliver on the concept that drew viewers in initially. If a show introduces this unique, intriguing premise, especially one in its title, its core lore, and then slowly drifts away from it, or just fails to weave it in meaningfully, it can create this profound sense of betrayal for viewers who invested in that original idea.
Yeah, you lose the early adopters.
Exactly. The balance between rich character drama and compelling, impactful genre elements is absolutely crucial for keeping viewers happy in a series like iThonga. It's about fulfilling the promise of its own title, living up to the identity it established from day one. When a show strays too far from its original essence, it really risks losing the very audience it first captivated.
And that brings us towards the end of this deep dive into iThonga's episode 91. What we've really explored today, I think, illuminates this vibrant, often contentious, and just deeply fascinating world of audience reaction to serialized drama.
It really is fascinating.
A single episode can absolutely create these profound divisions among its viewers, driven by everything from, their empathy for a character like Makamalo caught in this tragic web, to their assessment of a new villain's effectiveness, their believability, like Imminathi.
Right.
And even their fundamental expectations about narrative pacing and whether the show is actually delivering on its core promise.
It's abundantly clear, isn't it? Audiences are not monolithic. They don't all think the same way.
Not at all.
They come to each episode bringing their own unique expectations, their preferences for pacing, their deeply held ideas about character agency, their personal limits for dramatic believability. And this rich tapestry of individual and collective responses then translates into this vibrant, often really passionate landscape of online discussion and debate. It's a powerful testament to how immersive great storytelling can be.
Precisely. So as we wrap up, here's maybe a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to mull over. As you think about your own favorite shows, what does this intense, diverse reaction from iThonga viewers really tell us about the evolving relationship between the storyteller and the audience? Especially now, in this age of immediate, unfiltered feedback everywhere.
It's a big question.
Are audiences increasingly becoming, active co-creators of meaning, demanding specific narratives, specific character arcs, effectively maybe even influencing the story's direction? Or is this just the natural evolution of passionate fandom? In a world where everyone has a platform, right? A readily available platform to show their voice louder and faster than ever before.
Something to definitely chew on.
Something to ponder, anyway, until our next deep dive.